So is melee rogue viable and is it fun to play? Well, yes and yes. A lot of people were suggesting builds for the rogue that are bow primary, and there's nothing wrong with that. But in my mind, rogue is a dual wielding agile fighter, and I tried to achieve that in the early access beta of Diablo 4. So I came up with a frost melee build that was honestly unkillable and it was so much fun to use. You could try it next week in the open beta. I will show you all the skills and the items I'm using after the boss fight. For the basic attack, I went with the Invigorating Strike. It really helps with energy regeneration, which is one of the weak points, I think, for Rogue right now, at least from what I've seen on the beta. After all, we only see until 25, so in any way, we'll get our energy regeneration to 30 if we hit somebody who's injured or crowd controlled, which they always are. You're gonna see later with the other skills and the items we're using. And then the other thing is the second upgrade is making them vulnerable when you're under 50% energy. So basically when you deplete your energy, you will hit them with the Invigorating Strike to increase your regeneration and then make them vulnerable. Now for core skill, we're using Flurry. The normal Flurry is like an arc attack in front of you, frontal arc. But I found an aspect which actually can be found from the codex after doing a dungeon, but I also found it on items which was with higher bonus. I will show in a little bit from the items. So what this aspect does is basically makes Flurry circle around you instead of frontal arc, and also increases the damage of Flurry by, I think from the item I got was 13%. So every time we're attacking a vulnerable or crowd controlled enemy, we're recovering 1% maximum life. So if we're hitting a lot of monsters, it's up to 12% per cast. So we're constantly regaining health back. Now the second upgrade for Flurry is allowing us to kind of spread the vulnerability from one monster to the other. So if you remember from Invigorating Strike, even if we make one enemy vulnerable, then we can hit them with Flurry and they all become vulnerable. And this happens like all the time. Now I went for the passive Stutter Step. It's very good, like we're critting a lot, so we're constantly keeping up this movement speed bonus. From agility, the main thing we're using is dash. So you got 2 charges of the dash, and the upgrades we chose. So the first one, it gives you 20% more crit strike damage for 5 seconds. So basically you dash through them and then you start flurrying them, and when you crit, they take 20% more damage. So the second upgrade allows us to recover a little bit of the cooldown every time we dash through crowd controlled enemies. So we're using caltrops, you'll see in just a little bit. So a lot of the times they're slowed, so this really helps our dash get recovered quickly. So the second skill that we're using from the agility tree is caltrops. So basically it allows you to jump back and shoot like a circle of caltrops that will slow enemies down and do damage, which helps you, you know, synergize with the rest of the build. It has like 2 charges, so you can do it twice in a row, or just mix it up with the other skills. Also, with the first upgrade, the longer they stay in the circle, the more damage they take. And the second upgrade is changing the damage to cold damage, which slows them down. So it really helped to keep that, you know, frost build up, because you'll see later from the imbuement skills we pick the cold, so they're constantly like slowed and frozen and chilled. It really synergizes with everything you'll see a little later. So I completely skipped Traps Cluster. Now for the imbuement, like I mentioned earlier, cold imbuement to synergize with cold caltrops. What this does is basically imbues our 2 next attacks with cold damage that chills them. It applies it on your dash, and it also applies it on flurry. So as you can see, like the first upgrade, it has a chance to make them vulnerable. So this synergizes with the Invigorating Strike and the Flurry upgrades. So basically, like the whole time they'll be vulnerable, or most of the time. And we're doing 20% more damage to ground controlled enemies and double that for frozen enemies. So because the beta only allowed us that many skill points, I skipped Ultimate. I got Adrenaline Rush. All 3 ranks of it, because like I said earlier, the energy regeneration was kind of a problem. Now for the specialization, I'm using mostly Inner Sight. It's actually pretty easy to fill it up, especially on boss fights, because your target is always the boss. Sometimes it could change a little if there's ads for the boss, but for the most part it's very useful for boss fights. Let's look at the items now. While the stats are not ideal, what we're going for here is the aspects. Although the plus 15 regeneration while not damaged, pretty good, because a lot of the times we'll just dash around and not take any damage, so this will kick in. So on the hat we have aspect that is triggering a barrier when we hit elite enemy. It is 630 damage. That's quite a bit actually. Our health pool is like around 400. So this triggers every 30 seconds for 10 seconds. So in a boss fight you could use it a few times. It goes very well with this aspect. We deal 48% increased damage while we have a barrier active. So for that 10 seconds, we're doing 50% more damage. That's kind of crazy. On the chest, we have kind of a defensive one. This aspect I think I got from a dungeon. So basically, when we're lower HP, we get the unstoppable for 4 seconds, which helps us escape tough situations. On the gloves, we have another one we got from a dungeon. This gives us 10% speed for 3 seconds whenever we use trap or grenade. So every time we use caltrops, this will activate. Now you'll see in a little bit we have a couple of aspects that allow us to kind of modify our traps and even our evade. Every time we evade and use caltrops, we'll drop grenades, so this will activate every single time. So this 10% movement speed is almost constant. Nothing special about the pants here. We do get a little bit extra regeneration out of combat. Well, it's not out of combat, it's when we're not damaged, so this triggers while we're fighting and not taking damage. On the shoes, we have a nice one as well. 46% chance to spread the crowd control to unaffected enemies. I think 46% is very, very high. I can see it's working very well. This amulet I got really early. As you can see, it requires level 6, but that's so good. Every time we hit something with the Invigorating Strike, which is our basic skill, we get 25% damage reduction for 10 seconds. This is very, very strong. Also, the amulet came with very good skills, +1 to all agility and +1 to all imbuement skills. Another very strong aspect for our build, you remember from our skills, we're making enemies vulnerable all the time. We're getting this buff non-stop. It's capped at 9, but 9% crit, pretty good. And for the second rank, we got blurry aspect, which I mentioned in the beginning when I was talking about the flurry. As you can see, it damages enemies in a circle around you instead of the frontal arc, and it has increased damage. Now, I've seen one of the dungeons has this aspect as a reward, but the damage increase was, I think, 8%. So you could find an item with the aspect with higher damage. I wonder if when we get higher level, maybe we'll get like 20%. Who knows? So now on our first dagger, we have an aspect that is basically buffing our evade and shadow step to drop grenades every time we use it, and this synergizes with the other aspect that I showed you earlier. So every time we evade, we're gonna drop the grenades when we get that 10% speed buff. And on the other dagger, we have again similar aspect. This buffs our caltrops to drop grenades. So I just wanted to show you here the same aspect on an amulet. It gives a lot more damage. So basically some of the aspects will have increased power on depending on the item. All right, that was it. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna leave a little footage for you to see the build in action. We're planning to make a lot of builds for Diablo 4, so consider subscribing, like the video if you did. I'll see you in the next one.